Welcome to this building permit training course. The building permit course is broken down into 5 sections. A building permit overview. Why are building permits required? Who can pull a permit and who is responsible? How to pull the permit, and after you pull a permit.
The property owner, we talked about permits. They didn't want to pay the money, so we didn't get them.
The property owner told me he was going to pull his own permits.
I didn't realize I needed to get a building permit.
I got a permit on this job after I got it started. Then I found out that work never would have been approved on this job site.
Yeah, I dropped the ball on this one. I let the permit slip through the cracks.
My worker was supposed to pull the permit.
I'm just a one-man operation. I'm too busy doing the work.
Yeah, I guess I'm not as organized as I should be.
Sound familiar? These are just some of the excuses contractors have used for not pulling a building permit. Hello, I'm Nancy Springer, a board member of the Contractors State License Board and the Chief Building Official for Sacramento County. Building officials from around California have joined me and the board to create this building permit training course for you. We want to help make sure you follow permit requirements in the future. We also want you to have the information you need to understand why it's important to pull permits and how not pulling permits hurts the property owner and your business. So let's get started.
I'm Joe Cuff from the City of Rancho Cordova Building and Safety Division. Section 1 is a building permit overview. Building permits are based on what's called the California Building Standards Code. This code covers uniform standards for construction and construction materials. They're consistent with the accepted standards of design, engineering, and fire prevention practices. According to the California Building Standards Code, no building or structure may be erected, constructed, enlarged, altered, repaired, moved, improved, removed, converted, or demolished unless a separate permit for each building or structure has first been obtained from the local building official. A building permit must be pulled before it is legal to begin a construction or renovation job. Both prime and subcontractors are responsible for making sure that all permits are pulled and in place before work gets started. There are more than 500 building departments in California, and code requirements can vary. As a licensed contractor or subcontractor, you're expected to keep yourself updated on local codes, building permits, and building inspections. If you've got questions, check with your local building department. They'll help you understand what's needed in your area. If you're working on a manufactured home, you may need to check with the California Department of Housing and Community Development, as they're often the agency that issues permits for these types of projects. However, a permit from your local building department will likely be required for any attached stairways, decks, or for the connection of utilities. You'll want to check with your local building department to make sure.
This is Bill Kelly for the Marin County Building Department. Section 2 is why are permits required?
Building permits are mainly about safety. Building codes provide reasonable assurances that a building is safe from structural failure, fire hazards, electrical shock, and other health risks. An inspection and sign-off by the local building department provides peace of mind for both you and the property owner that work is being done correctly and safely. The permits also provide a permanent record of all work performed and inspections conducted on a project. If a property is sold, the permit protects future owners. So, why do you need to pull a building permit? The simple answer is because it's illegal not to.
CSLB and local building departments work closely together, and systems have been put in place to make it easier for building departments to let CSLB know about problem contractors. CSLB can discipline your license for failing to pull a permit. Penalties range from a letter of admonishment, which is disclosable to the public for 1 year, to citations that include fines that range from $200 to $5,000, with disclosure to the public for 5 years. In some cases, an accusation may be filed that can result in the revocation of your license, or you may be forced to tear out the completed work, or even remove an entire building. The property owner also could be fined by the local building department and then take you to civil court or file a complaint with CSLB, since you're the one who's ultimately responsible for pulling the permits. And that's even if they didn't want you to pull a permit to begin with.
Building standards are enforced through plan checks and job site inspections. It's a step-by-step process. A plan check is a review of the construction documents. That includes design drawings to ensure that the project meets code for things like structural safety, energy conservation, green technology, and disabled accessibility. This includes systems and equipment like plumbing, electrical, and mechanical. Job site inspections are periodically performed to monitor the different phases of construction.
I'm Matt Wyatt from Ventura County Building Department. Section 3 is who can pull a building permit.
There are a few different people who are legally allowed to pull a building permit. They are a licensed contractor, a licensed architect or engineer, a third-party service provider who has the owner's authorization, or the property owner. Some building departments will allow your employees to pull permits, but will likely need written authorization from you. Check with your local building department beforehand so you avoid any unnecessary delays. Never take the word of the property owner or anyone else that a permit has been pulled. Remember that you're responsible for making sure the permit is in place prior to starting work, and make sure to get a copy of the permit and post it prominently at the worksite. If you choose to use a third party to pull a permit, remember that you're still responsible for making sure it's done before work starts. You're also responsible for making sure all other requirements are met, including the final inspection and sign-off. If you're a subcontractor, you're still responsible for making sure that permit requirements are met. Don't trust that your portion of work is covered under a permit that's pulled by the prime contractor. On the flip side, if you're a prime contractor, don't leave it to your sub to make sure that permits are pulled and completed. You are both responsible. Also, remember that it's your responsibility to determine if the job requires making code upgrades. That includes things like fire sprinklers, new plumbing, carbon monoxide detectors, and smoke alarms. Make sure the property owner is informed if the building department requires upgrades to bring the property up to code. You'll also want to be sure to include the installation of any upgrades in your contract, or make sure the upgrades are completed by a licensed contractor before you begin your contract work. That will help you avoid any misunderstandings or legal problems down the road. If you take over a job, can you use a permit that was pulled by the previous contractor? How about if the property owner pulls an owner-builder permit and doesn't declare you as the contractor? Both are good questions, and your local building department will have the answers.
I'm Gil Estrada from the Fontana Building Department. Section 4 is pulling the permit.
So, how do you know if you need a permit? The fastest way to find out if a permit is needed for a job is to check your local building department's website. But it would be even better if you called or stopped in to visit with them. Building department staff are there to serve you and the public by providing information about safety issues in the local building code. Be sure to discuss your plans in detail with them before you begin work, so you'll know if any permits are needed and what the costs will be. Even if a permit isn't needed, staff will still answer construction-related questions and can sometimes provide valuable guidance. It's a great relationship to build. Now you're ready to apply for a permit. Be prepared to document the who, what, when, where, and how of the job, along with any drawings or plans of the proposed work. Make sure your permit covers all work that requires a permit, and don't do work that's beyond the scope of the permit. Check with your local building department to find out how you should submit your plans and applications. It could be online, via email, fax, snail mail, and/or in person. Building department staff will review your application and plans to determine if your project meets local requirements. If it does, the permit is issued. If not, the staff may suggest solutions to help you correct any issues. Make sure that you allow enough time for plan approval when you set up your project timeline. A delay in getting building department approval does not give you permission to start work. The permit application will have a question about workers' compensation insurance. You must make sure this question is answered accurately, no matter who pulls the permit, you, the property owner, or a third-party service. So, when is someone an employee? The state's labor code defines an employee in part as every person in the service of an employer under any appointment or contract of hire or apprenticeship, express or implied, oral or written, whether lawfully or unlawfully employed. It's important to note that you're required to carry workers' compensation insurance for family members. The fee paid for the permit covers the cost of the application as well as the review and inspection process. Experienced building department staff are available should you have any questions. They want your project to be a success and to help you avoid any potential costly mistakes.
I'm Lydia Clary with the City of Stockton Building Department. Section 5, after you pulled the permit.
Once you've been approved for a permit, you have legal permission to start construction. You may be required to post a job card or the actual permit on the job site before you start working. On-site inspections will be required to make sure your work conforms to the permit, plans, local codes, and state laws. Building department staff will let you know approximately how many inspections may be needed for your project. Usually, you'll need to give them 1 or 2 days notice when you request an inspection. It's your responsibility to provide access to the job site and to have an OSHA-approved ladder available for the inspector if needed. If the inspector finds any issues that need to be corrected, do it in a timely manner. That will help keep your project moving towards completion. Also, if there are circumstances on the property that are beyond your control, such as unpermitted buildings not related to your job, be sure to communicate that to the inspector. As a licensed contractor, you're responsible for getting the final inspection prior to the permit expiring. When the building department gives you final approval, it means construction is completed and complies with local building codes. And with it, you get the satisfaction of a job done right and the peace of mind and knowledge that your hard work meets the safety standards and regulations in your community. There are situations where certain work you're doing that normally requires a permit may be exempted from that requirement. Always check with your local building, zoning, fire, environmental health, and public works departments to discuss the specific requirements of your project. Even if a permit is not required, your work must meet all applicable building codes. So, what do you do if a property owner tells you he or she doesn't want to get a permit? The best thing you can do is take time to educate them. Explain the value of a permit, especially that it offers an additional layer of protection to make sure all work is done correctly and safely. Let them know there might be legal consequences for them with the local building department or their mortgage holder. The building department could fine the property owner, especially if the unpermitted work results in an injury to another person. They could also have a problem down the road if they want other work done that requires a permit. Plus, there could be serious issues for them if or when they sell that property. As tough as it is to walk away from a job, if you're still unable to convince them that a permit needs to be pulled, that's exactly what you should do. You don't want to do anything that could potentially put your contractor's license in jeopardy.
Here are some final thoughts. If you're new to an area, please reach out to your local building department before you start taking on jobs. Go visit them or call their office. Get to know the staff and ask questions. Find out what's different or unique about codes in that local area, especially special circumstances that could affect your projects, like earthquakes, fires, floods, maybe protected lands. Ask about processes and timelines. What are their permit fees? How long does a plan check take? How do they prefer to be contacted to set up inspections? Are there any additional items you may need to be aware of? Remember, building department staff are there to help your project to be a success, to protect the property owners, and to make sure building and safety standards are met.